Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 290. Today we're going to talk about Abluxxen. This is a brand new card game, somewhat brand new, released only in Germany for right now. Designed by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. They've done a number of games, Palaces of Carrara, Sealand. Wolfgang Kramer is responsible for Six Nimmt. And this is a very, very simple, straightforward card game. Plays 2 to 5 players. There is actually a 2-player variant that has come out since the game was initially released. The files are available on Board Game Geek. I would go and definitely download those. Before I start reviewing this too much though, let's go ahead and look at how it works. Now what you see here are all of the components that come in the game. You have a giant stack of cards here, and these are the cards you're going to be drawing and playing. Different colors and numbers and things like that. And then there's one card here to keep track of who the current player is. Really don't need this card in a 2, 3, maybe even a 4-player game. It does come in handy when you get up to 5 players, which I'll make clear in a second, but you've got this card as well. Now, as I said in the intro, you can go and download the rules for 2-player. I would definitely play with this new variant with 2-player. It's definitely much better than with the base game. Also, I should have said you have to go and download the rules anyway if you want them in English. So what are you trying to do in Abluxxen? Well, you're going to have a draw deck and then a display of 6 cards that players can draw from. And when you go to draw cards in the game, you're either going to draw them from here or from the top of the display. However, one thing to note, when you draw them, let's say I had to draw 2 cards, you don't automatically refill those. You're only going to refill that main display once you're done drawing cards for your turn. Now what are you trying to do in the game? Well, each player is going to be dealt 13 cards, and like I said, there's different numbers and colors and things. So on your turn, you're going to play 1 or more cards. Now if you have, let's say, the only 2 you had, you could play the 2 by itself. But if you have multiple of a number, you can play multiple. So if I had 2 8s, I could play 2 8s. You don't have to play all 8s, but you can if you want. If I had multiple 12s, I can play all the 12s. Now, at the end of the round or end of the game, you're going to get 1 point for each card in front of you and minus 1 point for each card in your hand. Very, very simple scoring. Now let's say I played my 3 12s and it comes around to be my turn again. My next play might be 2 9s. And what I'm going to do is actually stack those on top. So maybe my next turn I play a single 3. So whatever the last set of cards that you played, or in this case card, is going to be available and on top of your pile and visible. Now throughout the game, other people of course are going to be playing cards as well. And what you're going to be checking is, let's say another player had played this 5. He's going to take a look. He's going to look at everybody's stack on the board, and he's going to see any set of cards that is the exact count of this. So any other player that had just played a single card, in this case me. And we're also going to see if that card's value is less than the card they just played. So if they played a 5, I could see, okay, I've got a 3, and what's going to happen is what's called a snatch action. And this may happen for multiple players. If somehow, let's say he had played the 5 first and then I had played a 3, the snatch action wouldn't happen. Even though the same number of cards, the value's less than. So then another player comes along, let's say they play a 9. Well, this would actually trigger 2 of those type of actions. And you're going to do that clockwise. And so what I could do is I could either take this card into my hand. If I was the player that played the 9, I could take this 5, put it in my hand, hopefully matching it with any other 5s that I might have in my hand. Or I could tell the player whose card this was to decide what to do. And they have 2 options. If you don't take the card, then that player will have 1 of 2 options. They can either take this card and put it back into their hand, or they can discard it. Now if you steal the card from them or they decide to discard it, then they have to draw however many cards that they got rid of. So in the case of a pair of 9s, let's say I had come and I'd played a pair of 13s. Well again, this matches the exact count of the top stack available on my stack, and the value is actually higher. So I could say, hey, that's cool, I've got a bunch of 9s in my hand. I'm going to play the 2 13s, take these 2 9s in my hand, and now this player then has to draw 2 cards. They could draw them blind off the deck. Maybe they have some 6s in their hand, so they would take both of these 6s and put them in their hand, and then you're going to refill this again. So that is the entirety of the game. You're going to play either until one person runs out of all their cards out of their hands, or this draw deck and display here run out. And at that point, you're going to count all the cards in front of you. Those are plus 1 point. Any cards you may have left in your hand are minus 1 point. Now you also have these X's, which are basically jokers. So if I had played these like that, it'd be 3 13s. If you played an X by itself, it's kind of technically a 14, but that's really it. Now there is, like I said, a 2-player variant. I'm not going to go into all the details. They're right here. It's a 1-page of rules. Basically, you set up a 3rd player. It's super easy, super straightforward, and it really does add a good amount of dynamics to the game. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview. This is one of those games where I play it and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? It's so very simple. You play a card, you know, you take other people's cards, you try to build a big set of cards and then play a whole bunch. Now there's a whole thing in this game was kind of like trying to chase the big point score. And I've seen games where, you know, somebody scores like, you know, 13 points, another guy scores 14, and then the next round somebody scores 45, and then I'm left with like -2. I'm kind of exaggerating on that, but you can see a big swing of points, and it's interesting because you get into this kind of mental game state of how far can I push it? Can I push it before either the deck runs out, which isn't going to happen except maybe in like a 2-player game or in like a 4 or 5-player game. Which leaves a 3-player game, but anyway, less likely in a 3 to 4-player game, but in a 5-player game you got so many players and stuff. But in a 2-player game it's very likely that you will get close, at least, not that you will run out. I actually haven't seen it run out, but you get really close. So what you're trying to do is, let's say you put out a single 2. Well, you can put that out there just to kind of get it out of your hand. You don't have it matched up with a lot of other ones, and you say you'll give that up to somebody who has a couple of 2s because, hey, there's a nice 10 in the middle, because if he takes that from me, then of course I'm forced to draw. And so this whole forced drawing thing really becomes kind of a game of cat and mouse, or fox and chicken. And that is pretty cool. So, I mean, it's really simple and basic and straightforward, and you can get, you know, screwed with the draw. Somebody can get like, oh, I got like a giant full house, like a 3 of a kind, a 4 of a kind, a 5 of a kind, you know, and I'm good to go from the first turn. And that can happen. You can get pretty close to that and get screwed over. But the game is a very basic filler, and it's fun entertainment. It's, you know, like 6 Nimmt is a game that I still enjoy playing once in a while, and I have a version of it still. And this is kind of similar in that line. This is way better than 6 Nimmt. I mean, 6 Nimmt is just there for, like, I don't really want to play a game, I just want to talk to people, and let's give us something to do with our hands while we talk. This has an actual game underneath it. But it's not super strategic and stuff. I was kind of going back and forth because we really enjoyed playing this other game called Potato Man. And, you know, that one's fun, and that one's really, you know, tweaky and interesting, kind of like this one. But, you know, I kind of go back and forth, but they're kind of similar. So if you like Potato Man, you're one of the 2 people in America or wherever that have Potato Man, then I think you would like this game. But it's a nice, good filler, and it's one of those where it's got a lot of push your luck. It's not a, you know, a dumb game. I do feel engaged the whole time I'm playing it, but there's really, on the surface of it, there's not a lot there. So, and even as you plumb the depths, it's a big card draw fest. I mean, if you get a good flop of cards and you play a bunch of cards, then you can go out with it. But it's kind of a push your luck. Like, do I play this hand of 7 ones when a hand of 7 anything can beat that? Well, you're like, well, who's going to have 7 of a kind of a thing? Well, there's enough cards, enough wilds and things that it's possible. So you want to be careful that somebody just goes, well, I'll take that. That's 7 of a kind. And then, you know, play it. Now you're screwed out of 7 points. You got to draw up 7 cards that you know, you're not drawing anything that matches and stuff like that. So there is some watching of the cards in the middle, you know, to see like, okay, he picked that 10, so if another 10 comes up, I don't want to force him to draw, because then he's just getting more 10s, and you know he's going to hit you over the head with that in the later turn. So that's pretty much the strategy of the game. But it's really fun and engaging. It's a nice, good filler game. So anyway, Abluxxen, I don't know if it's coming out in the United States. I got mine from Game Surplus. Again, with these, you know, little German card games, it's a good resource for that at a good price. So anyway, thanks. I'm not I'm not getting paid by this guy or anything. So just, hey, he brings the stuff over. He's the guy now that brings over the stuff, and you know, that's where I get it. That's what you're gonna get from me. So that's how you can find it, and I recommend the game. So he didn't pay me a cent. You know, he gets money from me. So I just want to make that clear, because lately I got a big order from him the other day. You know, so anyway, I just want to make that clear. Thanks.